How did we ever play these things with such a bad screen? Hey guys, Will here. So something completely different for the channel today, but something that brings me a lot of joy and hopefully will bring you some joy as well. So I was digging through some old drawers, cleaning up a bit around the house a couple of months ago now, and came across my old childhood Game Boy. Now, if you're anything like me, this was my absolute prized possession as a kindergarten kid back in 1990, and something that I spent many hours on all the way through my childhood in the 90s. Now, back in the day, these things were absolutely amazing, but if you pick one up today, you probably going to wonder how the hell did we ever play on these things. The screens on these things weren't backlit, the contrast ratio was absolutely horrendous, and you couldn't even play it really outdoors because you had to hold it at a certain angle. It was just a bad experience overall. But as you guys know, one of my absolute favorite things to do is to tinker and modify electronics and make them do things they weren't originally intended to do. And I've discovered this entire scene of Game Boy mods that I didn't even know existed a couple of months ago now. So what I'm going to do today is take you through the relatively easy process, surprisingly easy process of upgrading your original Game Boy to something like this that would have made me the absolute coolest kid in the school back in 1990. So let's dive in and show you how it's done. All right, so before we dive into some mods, I wanna make sure that you guys are aware of a couple of important things. The retro gaming scene these days is in a pretty awesome place. There's all sorts of software you can use, all sorts of different types of hardware to emulate pretty much anything from old Atari games, arcade style games, all the way through to things like even PS4 emulation is now becoming a thing. So depending on the experience that you wanna get out of retro gaming, you might not even need to spend any money at all. So I don't want you to just dive into this blind and go spending a bunch of money to fix up an old Game Boy. I want you guys to be aware that you can just do it on your phone. Emulation's been a thing on Android phones since the beginning of time, basically. RetroArch is just released on iPhone and Apple devices as well, which is a really good option. Obviously, you don't get the same kind of haptic feedback out of the keypad that you would on a real-life Game Boy, but you can connect aftermarket controllers via Bluetooth and do all kinds of funky things like that. Even on an Apple TV these days, you can do emulation as well, and that will play everything, again, through old arcade or Atari games all the way through to games like PS3, for example. Now, if you do want to play on a dedicated handheld device with physical buttons, there are quite a few options available there as well, and quite a few of them end up being quite a bit cheaper than modifying an old Game Boy, even if you already own the Game Boy and you're just buying the parts to upgrade it. So just to give you a couple of quick recommendations here, one of the ones that I really love is this FPGBC, which is a funny playing Game Boy Color. Basically, it's using the original or copies of the original hardware in terms of the buttons and the layout of the device. It looks just like a standard Game Boy Color, but it's actually completely remade electronics internally. These come as a kit, and I think this was under $100 Australian to order this thing and completely build it. It was a fun little project to build with my daughter as well, and yeah, it plays all of your Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. If you want to go a step further and play other things as well, you can get all sorts of different handheld devices like this little guy here. This is a Ambernic RG35XXH. There are different orientations available. These are relatively cheap as well. I picked this up off Alibaba for, I think it was about 65 Australian dollars on special. Normally you can pick them up for well under 100 Australian dollars though. And this thing again will play anything from your arcade games all the way through to about PS1. This does without too many issues. PS2 starts to get a little bit choppy, but obviously the experience will depend. And this is basically just an emulation device. So it's running a Linux-based operating system, and you can load all your ROMs on there and yeah, just get up and playing. As you can see here, it's actually really cool. And this is my favorite little handheld device. There's literally hundreds of different options out there. Those are just a couple of my favorites. And I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, check out a channel called Retro Gamecore. I'll link it down in the description below. But his channel has been absolutely awesome in helping to choose the right kind of hardware depending on the experience that you want to have. So in terms of the actual games, obviously if you're using a Game Boy, you are going to need some sort of a cartridge. There are the original games, of course, that you can use. You can also get these multi-carts now, which basically use an SD card. You can load the SD card up with your favorite ROMs and play the games that way. And that's the way I've been using these old Game Boys. Now, ROM files, of course, are a bit of a gray area, so I'm not going to be covering how you can actually get your hands on those in today's video. You can do your own research there. But as far as these Game Boys are concerned, you've got a couple of different options available to you. You can just upgrade the screen to give you something like what we have here. So this is just an IPS display, obviously backlit as well, inside an original Game Boy shell. So it gives you a completely factory experience other than just the upgraded screen. Then you have the option of a completely custom build like what we're going to be doing today that allows you to customize the color of all the buttons, the shell, even add things like upgraded sound mods if you want to, upgraded battery systems. So instead of using AA batteries, you can use a lithium ion battery internally, all kinds of things that you can be doing, but we're going to keep it as simple as we can today. We're just going to do a reshell, new buttons, and upgrade to an IPS display to get rid of the funky old LCD. So let's dive in. So I'll put the full list of parts that we're going to be using for today's video in the description box down below this video for you guys. Now, there are a couple of recommendations that I have specifically. I have tested out a bunch of different options here, and I've found that the RIPS V4 LCD upgrade kits are the best ones. That's just my experience. Obviously, you can do your own research there. But I found that the V5 upgrade kits, in addition to having a slightly smaller screen than what you get with the V4, also have quite a few issues with ghosting, and the LCD quality just doesn't seem to be as good as the older V4 kits. So that's the one that I recommend, and the one that I've linked down below, and the one that we're going to be using in today's video. Now, there's a couple of different options available there as well. You can buy just the LCD upgrade kit, which will come in a box that looks like this, or you can buy it with a custom shell and buttons as well. So if you go for that option, you're going to get a little package that looks something like this. There's a bunch of different color options available. This is just a selection of a few of them. So we've got a clear, we've got a blue and a red there as well. We're just going to be working with the smoked clear one today. And that does come, as you'll see in just a minute, with some buttons included, but you can of course customize that too. So what I've done is I've ordered some custom black membranes. That's going to give us a nice black area underneath the Game Boy here, so we're not seeing a funny color underneath the buttons. It also gives us the nice black buttons for our start and select as well. And then some factory Game Boy replacement buttons here as well, which is going to give us the kind of dark gray and then the pink buttons for B and A. Now, regardless of the color shell that you ordered, these screen kits, at least at the time that we're filming this, do all come with a gray screen bezel. So in this case, we've also custom ordered a nice black bezel for our screen as well. You just need to be a little bit careful when you order these that you're ordering the right size. This IPS V4 kit does come with a slightly larger display like this guy here. You can see that is a little bit bigger than what we have on this guy. So obviously you just need to make sure that your bezel matches the screen size. This is a 2.6 inch screen, so we want to have a 2.6 inch bezel. So let's set all these bits and pieces aside now and get into the build process. Okay, so we're going to switch off our Game Boy. We're going to flip it around, take out our game cartridge, and also take out our batteries. So just remove the cover, pop the batteries out. You've done this a million times in your childhood, so it shouldn't be a struggle. Set those guys aside. And what we're going to be doing is removing our 6 screws from the back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6. Now, depending on the model Game Boy that you have, these are probably going to be tri-wing screws rather than a standard Phillips head. The kit that you buy does actually come with 2 screwdrivers, one of which will be a tri-wing, the larger one. So we're going to use that to remove the screws. Now, we are screwing into plastic throughout here. So one of the recurring themes throughout this entire video is going to be never do the screws up too tight, because you can strip out the threads in the plastic, and that is going to be a bad time. So we're just going to undo these screws nice and gently. So hold the shell together and then just flip it upside down, give it a little bit of a shake to get the remaining screws out. I think that's all of them come out, and we're going to pop those all aside. Now, the kits, if you've bought one with a replacement shell, do actually come with replacement screws. I kind of like to reuse the factory screws just to give it that OEM look, but it's completely up to you whether you want to do that or not. So once the shell is undone, what we're then going to do is lift up the back of the Game Boy. Now, you don't want to pull this off to the side because there is a ribbon cable in here, and because this is old, you don't want to risk damaging that cable. So we're just going to very carefully fold it over like this, and you can see now we've got the front half and the back half separated. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin it around this way, and we're just going to very gently grab the back of this ribbon cable and just slide it out. Now, there's no catch or release mechanism, anything like that. It literally just slides in and out. Actually replacing this and reconnecting at the end is the hardest step involved in this entire process. So now we have the back half of our Game Boy and the front half of our Game Boy separated. So the next step now is going to be removing the motherboard from the back half of our Game Boy shell. So we're going to take our Phillips head screwdriver. These aren't tri-wing screws, and we've just got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to undo here. So just undo those. Very straightforward. And now we can lift the motherboard out of the back of the shell. Just obviously be careful doing this. You don't want to break anything. It does come out relatively easily. And you'll see we've got our motherboard, our power board here, and our little audio board. So we're going to set the shell aside. Just be careful here. The little power switch is loose, so it can just come out. We're going to be replacing that a little bit later on. Anyway, we don't need to do anything else on the back half of the shell for now. And believe it or not, if you've bought a full re-shell kit, you actually only need this part from the original Game Boy. You don't even need this original factory front half at all. So we're going to set this guy aside for now. And yeah, this is our motherboard. You can see the main CPU there, the memory chip, and then as I mentioned before, this is our little power regulator. So the regulator board is generally the part that lets go in these. So if you're having issues with a garbled screen, the Nintendo logo looks all garbled or just won't boot at all, provided that your motherboard's in good condition, it's all cleaned up. Usually the first step is replacing this board here. Now there are actually replacement boards available, and I'll link a couple of options for you down in the description below. This is a Robot Retro replacement board. Doesn't work with the factory LCD screen, but it is actually a good upgrade if you're switching across to an IPS LCD backlit display. So we're not going to be doing that upgrade in today's video, but if you do want to do it, it's just as simple as desoldering these 4 pins here, sliding off the original board and replacing it with the aftermarket one. One of the other benefits of that board upgrade is it does clean up the audio as well, so it'll get rid of some of that interference that you hear through the factory system. Now I actually kind of like that original sound just because it's got some nostalgic value to me as well. I like the little pops and crackles that you get through the speaker. So we're just going to leave that completely alone for today's build. But if you do have issues with the thing not booting once it's got the IPS display on it, that upgrade does draw quite a bit more power than the factory LCD did. So if you do run into issues, chances are you just need to replace that board and everything will be fine. So we're going to set our motherboard aside just for now, and let's get to work unboxing our upgrade kit. So first of all, the shell, I'm just going to undo the plastic bag here, pull the shell out, and this will be unscrewed from the factory, and you can see it does come with some membranes and some replacement buttons. It seems to be just a bit of a lucky dip here, regardless of what color kit you order. You can see in this particular case, I got some blue and some black buttons, but yeah, it really is a bit of a lucky dip. Replacement screws in that bag as well, as you can see, but we're gonna set all of those guys aside because as I mentioned earlier, I did specifically order some nice black membranes and replacement factory Game Boy buttons with the pink A and B buttons. So let's get those all out of the bag now quickly, and we'll just have those set aside. Now, one thing you do just need to be careful of is that the little plug for the link port will be in one of those bags as well. Which one's it in? This one here. So we just want to make sure we grab that as well. So we'll grab him out. There he is. We're going to be plugging that into our link port right at the very end. Grab out our other membranes here as well. And that is all good. So first step here is going to be to install our motherboard into the new rear shell. So we're going to pop our replacement power button in. Now, obviously, if you're reusing the original factory shell, you wouldn't need to remove the motherboard from the shell anyway, but we're just going to pop this guy down in here, make sure that it is in the off position and lines up with your switch just here. So very simple here. We're just going to tuck the board in very carefully, making sure we don't snag any cables. Line this guy up here as well. And we're just going to grab our original factory screws. So it's these 2 guys here, and then these 2 guys here. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit here and use a different screwdriver because that screwdriver is not absolutely fantastic, but I'm just going to pop this back into place. Now again, remember, you don't need to make these crazy tight. Just snug is absolutely fine. So that's the back of the Game Boy now prepared. You can actually pop that link port cover in now if you want to as well. We might do that just so we don't accidentally lose it. I know what I'm like. We'll set that guy aside. Now we can get to work preparing the front of our case. So we'll just wipe off our mat so we don't scratch it, set it up here, and let's grab out our replacement screen kit. So there's quite a few bits to this. We'll open up the bag here. We've got a little strip of double-sided tape. We've got our replacement LCD screen and the driver board here, and tucked inside this bag as well is the replacement glass screen protector, and you can see it is that factory color that we talked about before. So we're going to leave these in the anti-static bag just for now. We've got a little plastic shim here for aligning our screen, and then finally we've got the actual front board here. Now, if you buy the kit that I've recommended down in the link below, it does come with the speaker pre-soldered. A lot of the other kits that you'll find online don't actually include a speaker, or at least don't solder the speaker. So in those cases, you may need to salvage the speaker from your original front board. So that's one of the reasons, again, that I've recommended this particular front board. So the next part of the actual build process now is going to be to prepare the front of the shell. But what I would recommend you do before that is just quickly testing all this gear to make sure that everything works. You don't have any dead pixels or anything that's going to be a deal breaker before we get in and populate this front half of the shell. So we're going to set this guy up here for now, and let's just quickly assemble our screen just to make absolutely sure that everything is fine here. So this is quite delicate. Just be very, very careful here. So we've got a little LCD here. What we're going to do is we're going to take the ribbon cable from that, and we're going to place it into our connection just here. So there's a little tiny lever on here. We're going to release that lever. It just folds up like that. And then our little ribbon cable is just going to slide into that connection there, like so. And then we pop that lever down, and that is now connected. Then we're also going to want to take our ribbon cable here and slide that into the back of the connection. So what I like to do is just bend it slightly, so I've got a way that I can work, and just slide it in like so. Then move everything down on your desk like that. We're now going to slot this ribbon cable into this connection here as well. So this needs to be this way up. So what I would recommend is stand this up and kind of go like this. So it's a little bit dodgy here. You do have to be very careful, but we're just going to kind of place everything in its rough position. Get our connection in place here. And carefully slot it in like so. All right, I think we're good. So we'll sit that like that. We've got our LCD and our driver board sitting here. There's nothing there that it can short on. Okay, that's all good. Now you don't have to test everything. It is more awkward to do it this way, but it just saves you any hassle if there are any problems. So it is something that I would recommend doing. So let's just pop these in. And a little power switch will be down here. Again, just check that nothing is going to short out here. So when we boot this up, we should get a red LED here. Our screen should turn on with a black bar that'll come down. We won't get the Nintendo logo because we don't have a game cartridge installed. And we should also get the ding sound through the speaker as well when that logo reaches the bottom. So I heard something there. There we go. All right, so everything is working. We don't have any dead pixels. There's just a little bit of dirt underneath the screen protector, I think. But yeah, everything looks good. Battery's back out. Okay, very carefully flip everything back over again. Unplug our ribbon cable. We can actually leave that ribbon cable installed on this side now. We don't really need to take that off again, and we'll just quickly pop the LCD screen off again. So we'll release that little connection. There we go. And that is now loose. So it's definitely the most awkward part of the process if you do want to test everything beforehand, but it is worth doing, I think, at least. So now what we need to do is start preparing the front half of the shell. Now, depending on the kit that you buy, they may have already pre-modified this, or you may have to do some adjustments yourself. If you are reusing the factory shell, you will need to remove these two little posts here. You may also need to trim out the display area a little bit as well. So what I like to use, where did I put it? Over here. Just a little trimming tool like this. If you are using the factory shell, what I would recommend is just grab your screen protector and just hold it up against the back like this. If the area that is cut out on the back of the screen protector is larger than the cutout in the shell, you know you're going to have to trim it, and basically just trim the shell so that it lines up or is a little bit bigger than that area there, but obviously without going outside the bounds of the bezel. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory for you guys, but as you can see, this one's already the correct size. So all we need to do is just gently trim off these two legs here. So you can just do it basically with a trimmer tool like this. Just be careful it doesn't hit you in the eye. They come off very easily, like so. So another one as well. Yeah, don't just squeeze it really hard because it will flick up and hit you in the face potentially. So there we go. You can see that one flicked up. All right, all good. That is done. Now what we want to do is install our buttons and membranes. So we're just going to grab these. It can only go in one way, so you can't really screw this up. Pop that in like so. Grab our buttons. These aren't marked like they are on the Game Boy Color, so they can go in either position. That's absolutely fine. Our D-pad. Our membrane for the D-pad, there it is, and our membrane for our A and B buttons. So that is done. Then we want to drop in our LCD. So there's a couple of steps involved in this. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our little template, and there's a very fragile ribbon cable on the side of the LCD. So we're just going to fold this up very gently, like so. We're going to place the LCD inside the template, and you can see this has got a little cutout on this side, which corresponds with the ribbon connection. So it's going to line up like this, but this is where our double-sided tape comes into play. So let's just place this down gently, quickly for you guys. What we're going to do is we're going to cut off a strip of this double-sided tape. Where are my scissors? Over here. Doesn't need to be long, just enough to hold things in place here. We're going to peel the back off this. And we're going to stick that on the back of our LCD. Make sure you stick it on the back and not the front, and then we're going to peel off the other side. There we go, like so. Then we're going to stick our template on. So make sure that the cutaway is on the front side like this. And then we're just going to stick our LCD into the template like so. Don't push too hard because we are pushing on the screen there. It does have a little protector on it, as you can see. And then we're also going to stick down our driver board onto the back here as well. So we're going to cut another strip of our double-sided tape and do the exact same thing again. So we're going to peel off one side. There we go. And then very carefully fold our driver board over, stick it down on the back, and there we go. That is our LCD prepared. Now just make sure that these areas that we cut off before are nice and flat. I did notice that this one's got a little bit of a sticking up bit there, so we're just going to very carefully scrape that off. We want to be careful that we don't scrape the front of the shell, because obviously being a smoked shell, we may end up with a little bit of scratching visible on the outside. So just give it a blowout as well. Make sure we don't have any dust that's going to get trapped underneath there. So with the LCD now prepared in its little template and the little pegs cut off the shell, what we're going to do next is remove the screen protector off the front of the LCD and then drop it into place. Now you're probably going to need to clean the LCD before you put the bezel on the screen anyway, but we want to try and do this as quickly as we can. What I like to do is just have a clean surface underneath, and I like to peel it off while it's already upside down so we don't have any dust land on the display. So we're going to peel it off like that, drop it into place like so, and you can see now the reason why we had to cut off those pegs. The LCD can actually just very slightly foul on that peg there. You can actually trim the template here to clear that peg if you want to do it that way around rather than modifying the shell, but I prefer to do it this way. I just think it's a little bit cleaner. But then what we want to do is drop our board onto the back here. The speaker just sits in place like so. This board will sit on the back just like that. Now I'm going to remove this ribbon cable again. You don't need to do this, but just to make it a little bit easier to see exactly what's going on here. We're then going to fold our LCD cable over exactly the same as we saw before, making sure our little latch is released. Slide that guy into place. Now if we do have issues once we boot this up, chances are it's because this connection isn't quite right. So just make sure that's in place like so. Then we're going to grab from the little bag that we looked at before the 6 little shorter Phillips head screws from the kit. So the longer ones will be tri-wing, the shorter ones will be Phillips head. And we're going to populate this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one here. So 6 in total. I generally like to start with the inside ones, just so we're not putting any tension on the edges of the board. And again, you don't want to go crazy tight with these, just enough to sit the board snugly in place without any issue. I think I might have grabbed 7 screws instead of 6 there, but that is absolutely fine. Set this guy aside and just screw these down. So I like to start with these guys here. Not too tight, just enough to hold everything snugly in place. Remembering again, you are screwing into plastic here. So just be nice and careful. Okay, then we just want to tuck our wire for the speaker very gently down into the side of the shell here as well, so it doesn't accidentally get pinched when we put everything together a little bit later on. Then I'm going to take the screen protector that we just took off. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just going to drop it back in place here just to make sure that we don't get any unnecessary dirt. Like I said before, we probably will end up needing to clean this anyway before we put the bezel on, but that just helps to protect the screen a little bit like so. So we're going to flip this back over now, making sure that our LCD latch and connection is in place. All this board is in place nicely as well. We're going to then replace our ribbon cable. So exactly as we saw before with the contacts facing upwards, just slide her into place like so. We're then going to take the back of the assembly flip our Game Boy over like this, and I like to just sort of hold it like so and slot this guy into its connection just like that. So we're going to do one last check just to make sure that everything is nice and tight. I might just put a little bit more torque on the motherboard screws here. I just noticed that they're a tiny little bit loose still. Okay, so that's everything nice and snug. Then we just want to make sure that our ribbon cable sits nice and cleanly like that. Put everything together, and now we just need to replace our 6 screws in the back here. So we're going to reuse the original factory screws. In my case, you don't have to do this. You can use different ones if you want to that come with the kit, but I like to keep things as factory as I possibly can. Drop those in place. These 2 guys here as well. And then we just need to tighten everything down. Now, one of the important things with these kits is that the contrast wheel, which is now going to be a menu button and contrast wheel, I'll explain how all that works in just a moment, that can get a little bit snagged on the case. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten down the opposing side to the contrast wheel, so the side that has the link port and the volume wheel. We're going to tighten that side down first. And we're going to make this side relatively tight. So again, we are screwing into plastic, so not crazy tight. But there we go, that'll do. I'm going to go down the bottom next. Then I'm going to go over to this side. And then for these last 2 here, which I've intentionally left to last, we're just not going to do those up quite as tight as we did the other ones. And that's just going to ensure that our contrast wheel doesn't end up snagging. So very much on the home stretch now. Just want to quickly check that our contrast wheel rolls and that the menu function can push in absolutely fine. Feels like this is all working perfectly, so that is all good. We can then put our batteries back in place. Then we'll just pop our battery cover back on. Now remember, there are other mods you can do. You can install LiPo batteries in these things if you want to. So let's flip it over, just make sure that everything is still working. We'll turn our volume up as well so we don't get scared that there's no sound. I might just pop my game cartridge in here as well just to make sure that that is all good. And let's switch her on now. We should see Nintendo logo come down, get the chime, and yep, we're loading into the operating system. This is a multi-cart, so that is why it's not loading directly into a game. So that is all good. Now what I like to do is actually, we'll open up a game. Just go to Game Boy World and open up Super Mario Land. And this is going to give us a good opportunity. There are a couple of ROMs that you can download if you want to for LCD testing specifically, but this will give us enough just to make sure that everything is clean on the display. So what we're going to do before we peel off the screen protector, we're going to make sure that we've got a nice clean microfiber towel handy, and that we've also got our replacement screen bezel here as well. So I'll just grab that quickly. So the way this is going to work is we're going to peel off our screen protector that we placed back on after we installed the LCD. We're going to peel off the backing on this guy too. And then we're going to just make absolutely sure everything is clean and drop this on as quickly as we can so we don't get any dust inside. So obviously try to do it in as dust-free an environment as you possibly can. Have a nice high-quality microfiber towel that doesn't leave behind little flecks of dust. And also some lens cleaner and some cotton tips are a good idea as well. So we've got everything we're going to need. We're not going to have to run off and wait for dust to come back into our system. So we're going to peel this off. And it looks like the display is in pretty good shape here. There's one little tiny mark just there that I can see. So I'm going to grab a cotton tip and just see if I can clean that off with a little bit of lens cleaner. I'm not 100% sure. It might be a mark on the LCD itself, but... oh no, that's come off. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we'll just go around the edge as well, just to pick up any little dust specks that might be accumulated there. Now, if there does end up some dust trapped in here, don't panic, because you can obviously pull the Game Boy apart and get the screen back out from the back and clean it that way. But obviously, the less dust and crap that we have in here to begin with, the better. So just quickly dry off the lens cleaner. I don't think we're even going to need to use the microfiber towel here. I'm just going to switch this display back off again now, just so I can see if there's any little particles of dust in there. Okay, we're gonna peel that off and quickly grab it from the edges. One more check. I see one more little dust speck there. Okay, drop that guy into place. Push it down. And there we go. A completely restored and upgraded original DMG Game Boy. We've got one screw left over there, which is just that Phillips head that I didn't end up using because I grabbed too many. And there we go. Now you probably have noticed that the screen looks a little bit offset to one side. So let's just quickly fix that as well, and then I'll run you through some of the options that we have available here. So we're gonna hold down our contrast wheel, and if we scroll down here, you can see we've got adjustments for our brightness, vertical position, horizontal position, pixel effect, battery display, and color adjust. I'll take you through all the various different color options and whatnot in just a second. But first of all, let's just quickly tap here. You can see the little bar has highlighted for our brightness. I'm gonna crank that up for you. We'll go down one to vertical position, and that is just going to allow us to adjust up and down on the display, so we get that centered perfectly. Likewise with horizontal position, we're just going to wind that across, so it's perfectly centered in our display. And then I also like to switch on this pixel effect as well, because I think it looks quite cool. It does dim the display down, but I think it's pretty funky. We also do have a battery display as well. I find that it's not super accurate. You can see it just sits up in the corner there. It tends to sort of be full until the battery's flat and then disappear. So I prefer to just leave that off. And then we can also individually adjust our colors through this menu as well. And I'll drop a couple of recommendations down in the description box below for you guys. But on top of this, there are also some presets on the display as well. So if you just tap on the color wheel, you can see it actually scrolls through a bunch of presets there. So I actually like this one because it looks kind of like the factory display, but you can see here, it just goes through. You've got a standard sort of black and white, and you can individually adjust those colors, as I mentioned briefly before as well. But that is how I like to have it. And there you go, guys. That is a fully refurbished and upgraded Game Boy DMG. As I mentioned before, there are plenty of other things that you can do as well. You can upgrade the sound. You can add a LiPo battery if you want as well. But I like the kind of crunchy audio that came in the factory experience. I think that it kind of adds to the experience rather than detracts from it. So there we go. We can get in. All the buttons feel exactly the same as they did on the factory Game Boy as well. And it is as simple as that, guys. So really hope that you've enjoyed this. Again, there are links down in the description box below for all the bits and pieces that we've used in today's video. Hopefully it brings some joy to you guys as it has for me as well. And yeah, I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye.